Happy Bitcoin Sunday, freaks. It's your boy Odell here for Citadel Dispatch, the show focused on actionable Bitcoin and freedom tech discussion. I believe this is our 5th dispatch of the week. I hope you've been enjoying all the content. Don't feel any pressure to listen to it all at once. I just had a great crew in Nashville, and I wanted to rip as many conversations as possible. So feel free to go through it at your leisure. And I'm open to other feedback in terms of that kind of as a format. Kind of feel like going forward, there's going to be like a big week. Once per month, there'll be a big week where there'll be, 3 to 5 dispatches posted. Then you guys can go through it at your own speed, and then maybe like 1 or 2 dispatches in between those big weeks, but the majority of content will be the big week. So I'm curious on your feedback. Feel free to hit me up on any of my contact information. That's odell.xyz, lists all that stuff. Or you can give me your feedback via Boostergrams, Podcasting 2.0, whatnot. The feedback is appreciated. Ultimately, the show is nothing without you guys, so let me know. Since this is the 5th show of the week, I'm going to keep this intro short. Obviously, Dispatch does not does not use sponsors. We have no sponsors. You guys fund the show. The audience funds the show. The easiest way to do that is by going to citadeldispatch.com and clicking the donate button. We have this geyser.fund page that lists all the donations as they're coming in. And you can support the show via Podcasting 2.0 apps, such as Fountain Podcasts and Breeze and Echo LN. That's relatively simple. You just search Citadel Dispatch in that app, choose how many sats per minute you think the show is worth, and those sats stream directly to the show. There's also a feature called Boostergrams, as many of you are aware, where you're able to choose how many sats you want to send and include a message with that. And that you can kind of think of as a global comment section with sats attached. So that geyser.fund page that I was saying that you can find at citadeldispatch.com actually lists all the Podcasting 2.0 streams as they're coming in. It's really cool. It's like this consolidated message board, leaderboard, and message board on that page. So you can see all the Podcasting 2.0 coming in. As you stream more sats, you climb the leaderboard. You can also donate just, on-chain Bitcoin or Lightning Bitcoin that way. And then recently on Nostradamus has added the ability to send zaps where you send 1,000 sat payments or whatever amount of sat payments you want to send. And those are all also get shown on that geyser.fund page. So it's really cool. No matter how you donate, everything's there in that combined leaderboard message board. And you can follow along and try and climb it and support Dispatch. I really do appreciate everyone who continues to support the show. Before we get started, I'm going to read the top 4 boostergrams from the previous episode with Steve Lee. Make sure you do listen to that at some point. It was a really great episode. But of course, it was only 2 days ago, but we already have a bunch of boostergrams, which is really awesome to see. We have at SourceWire with 21,000 sats. Absolute pleasure listening to the vast knowledge base Steve has. Love the show. Thanks, you both. We have at High with 8,778 sats saying go Chiefs. Obviously, Super Bowl Sunday is today. And the Super Bowl will be in about 5 hours. Chiefs versus Eagles. Fuck the Eagles. We have at 8 Mithrander with 7,777 sats saying amazing knowledge from Mr. Lee. And we have at Snowman sneaking in there with 100 sats because the show is very new, saying stacking sats in humble mode. Great advice. Okay, so with all that said, once again, to you freaks, Dispatch is also unique in that we have a live audience. We have a live audience that comes in through YouTube, Twitch, Bitcoin TV, Twitter, and our Matrix chats. And that live audience allows you to comment and ask questions in the show, and those comments go directly on screen. So you are part of the show. The freaks that continue to join for these live shows, especially on short notice, is truly appreciated. You guys make the show unique. I really enjoy different perspectives that you bring to it. Keep us honest and make sure we cover topics that we might not have covered otherwise, because it's easy to forget things. So many times I finish a Dispatch or Rabbit Hole Recap or any podcast, and I realized, oh, damn it, I should have covered that thing. So you guys keep us good on that. And then last but not least, I know it's a bear market. I know it's a recession. If you can't spare any sats, subscribing on your favorite platform, leaving a review, sharing it with friends and family. All these things help. Obviously, Dispatch is available on every podcast app, not just Podcasting 2.0 apps. You just simply search Zillow Dispatch. So thank you all for the support. Really do appreciate it. Okay, so with all that said, we have a bit of a spicy conversation today. I'm looking forward to it. Before we get started, we have a very spicy conversation. We have Casey Rodarmor in the house, the creator of Ordinals and Ordinal Inscriptions. How's it going, Casey?
Ordinal's founder is openly hostile to ETH-NFTs at this point, now advertising a method to burn the ETH-NFT and transfer the contents to BTC and writing ETH as a testnet. I take back anything nice I said about Ordinals. These jerks want to use ETH-NFT folks as the seed money for their BTC NFT architecture in order to supplant ETH. F them. So yeah, that's how it's going, man. Good to be here, man. Good to be here.
So that tweet was just at you, right?
I don't even know if it was at me or I think they were retweeting. Bro, my Twitter is effed. It's over.
So this will be a very good conversation because Casey is simultaneously hated by a large swath of the Bitcoin community and a large swath of the shitcoin community for this creation. Before we get started, I want to just, for the freaks, a bunch of you asked, why is this conversation relevant? This conversation is relevant to me because my mempools are filled, and I want to know what they're filled with and what is going on there. This conversation is also interesting to me because people are using Bitcoin for something, and I want to understand what they're using it for. And then last but not least, I take a lot of responsibility with my platform, with our audience. I've recorded, thousands of hours of Bitcoin conversations, and there's definitely a strong feeling on my front that I have a responsibility on who I provide a platform to and what kind of conversations happen on my shows. Casey specifically, I have known for quite a long time, and he has not shown any
no shitcoinery.
Yeah, I mean, that's there's some nuance to that. I don't know if you've shown no shitcoinery, but there's no pre-mine here with you. There's no you haven't even sold any NFTs yourself.
I made one
that you haven't sold
on mainnet. I made one, literally Inscription 0.
Exactly. So I think it might be a different situation if Casey had a big NFT collection that he was trying to dump on people. That's where the moral situation really comes into play. But anyway, just to let you freaks know how I'm thinking about it. And I it's always a balance between open discussion and platforming scammers. I do not think Casey's a scammer. I'm not perfect. Maybe I'm wrong, but that is how I'm thinking about this as we enter this conversation. And like I said, join us in the live chat. There's no censorship in the live chat. Every comment you do is piped in directly into the feed. So anyone who's watching the video feeds can see it. Okay. So there's the intro. Very spicy. Casey, before we start, I think it would be helpful if we do a little bit about yourself, but
sure.
Pre-ordinals, pre-inscriptions, before all this craziness.
How far back?
And
yeah.
Well, I mean, I want to talk about like your Bitcoin, like you and Bitcoin.
Sure.
What is your Bitcoin journey?
Yeah, good question. I don't know. Yeah, obligatory. Got to say it. I am a huge fan of this podcast, and I'm really excited to be talking to you. You and Marty have been like whispering in my ear about Bitcoin. Super, super, super long time listener. So just want to say that it's super awesome to be sitting here. But yeah, so Bitcoin. So really, my Bitcoin origin story just starts by really being very anti-authoritarian from a very, very young age. And I grew up in Berkeley, in the Bay Area, and that kind of used to be a place where people who are very anti-authoritarian could kind of fit in, and you could kind of be like just whiling out, just kind of like a libertarian, and you were kind of welcome on the left. Not so much anymore, but grew up there. Very anti-authoritarian. I don't know what I really consider myself. A lot of my views about politics have now become just very pragmatic, and I'm some sort of weird. I like competitive governance is the thing that I'm most interested in. But anyways, that anti-authoritarian streak led to me really disliking the government as I learned more and more about how the government works and what it does and what the outcomes of its policies are. I just started to see it as this just totally, mostly useless parasite that is just bad. Like, I think things that are subject to that are not subject to market forces ultimately like have no real meaningful constraints and like don't wind up doing useful things. And the government is like a non-useful and sometimes counterproductive thing that takes like 30% of our money. So that's kind of where this all started. And so when I saw Bitcoin, which was a long time ago, it was 2013, I saw it and I ignored it, right? I saw it and I was like, oh, this is like wow gold or like internet money or something.
Right.
And I ignored it. And then a few months later, I saw it again, and I'm a programmer. And so I started reading. I read the white paper. I didn't read the code, but I ran a node and I sort of read everything that I could at the time. I think at the time Reddit was actually pretty high signal.
Yep.
And I just read everything about it for, I don't know how long it took me to be like fully orange pilled, but it wasn't long. It was like 2 months or something where I just read. And then I was like,
Fire hose.
Yeah, fire hose, like immediately became my like obsession, and I was like, okay, like I think this is going to work. Basically, I was like, I don't really see how this is going to work. And this is something that I want to talk to you about because I think we have interesting thoughts about it, which are like, we got somebody at the window. I hope it's not a spook. So yeah, we actually have interesting thoughts about this, which is like, why hasn't the government cracked down harder on Bitcoin? And like, are they cracking down on Bitcoin? But anyways, yeah,
We should talk about that too, but
back to the origin story. So yeah, I'm a programmer. I was working at Google at the time, which I'm sure people are going to be like, bro, like spook city. But yeah, I was on SRE, site reliability engineer, basically just keeping Google from falling over. And I burned out of that pretty hard. But I was a programmer, but there was kind of nothing that I really felt like I could really offer by working on Bitcoin at the time. Like I've never, I knew I could go like build a wallet or build an exchange. I didn't have any ideas for how to build an exchange better than anybody else. I think it was I'm sure I'm going to get the dates wrong. It was like either 2014 or maybe somewhere between 2014 and 2017. I was actually employed at Chaincode Labs, a open source Bitcoin R&D company, essentially these days, like Bitcoin R&D and education company. In New York City. I worked doing open source development on Bitcoin Core. So like technically I was a core developer. I really shy away from that
as a title.
Yeah, as a title.
It's an appeal to authority kind of title.
Yeah, and also like, listen, like if Peter Willa wants to call himself a Bitcoin core developer, like he should do that. You look at my commits, they're like 16 like little cleanups and like, hey, I got rid of this dependency, it builds marginally faster, right? Like just like small shit. And so I feel like Bitcoin core developer is just like, there are people I'm like, yeah, totally Bitcoin core developer. But me, I am a to like X minor Bitcoin core developer. Like I'm not looking to get any like
step above intern.
Yeah, step Bitcoin core intern. Yeah, that's actually honestly basically what I was. So and so at the time I was very heavily getting into Rust, the programming language, which is like a safe and user-friendly alternative to C and C++ that's still very fast and can still be used for like all the hardcore system programming that you use C and C++ for. And so Bitcoin Core is a very big, very, very messy code base. It still has a lot of legacy decisions embedded in it. People like Carl Dong are like doing, or I think Carl Dong is not working on Bitcoin Core anymore, but doing God's work of very, very slowly improving the code base. And so for me, that was like not exactly the right thing. So I left. In retrospect, I think I should have stayed. Alex Morkos and Suhas Daftor, who run it, and I think still mostly run it, are like incredibly chill dudes. And if I was like, hey, I just want to like not work on Bitcoin Core but work on Bitcoin, then they probably would have let me do that. And it's good that they didn't, because we'd have ordinals a lot sooner. But so yeah, and then what did I do? Yeah, I did some shit coining after that. I mean, I like went to Facebook, and then I was very interested in Grin, the privacy coin.
It got a lot of Bitcoiners, yeah.
Got a lot of Bitcoiners. And like it was useful. What I did, and I can be totally transparent about it, is me and some friends were very excited about Grin, and so we started this special purpose investment vehicle to allow people who wanted to buy Grin to just like give us dollars, and we would buy Grin and hold it for them on their behalf. So yeah, I'm totally transparent about that.
It's a horrible investment.
Oh yeah. Like deep in the red. So I did sort of like the custody side of that, writing the code for custody. Grid, like I kind of don't. One thing about me that's maybe different from sort of the like left curve maxis is that like I don't see Bitcoin versus altcoins as being a moral purity test. Like I'm just not interested in that. Like if somebody wants to come like quote unquote cancel me for having like had to sort of like to have honestly shitcoined and been like, oh, I think this is cool, like maybe this is going to provide some value, like I don't think that's
Well, I think that's the only argument, in my opinion, is the moral question. Because, like, I don't consider shitcoins a threat to Bitcoin. I think it's a threat to people who choose to speculate on them.
Sure.
And so my biggest issue with shitcoins has always been the promoters of shitcoins and how they promote it.
Sure.
And if they don't disclose trade-offs, which they never do.
Oh yeah.
Better, faster, stronger than Bitcoin, right? With Grin, it was more private than Bitcoin. That is always my issue. Has always been on the moral side from the promoters, not necessarily as like shitcoins, will overtake Bitcoin or a threat to them technically or adoption wise.
No, I'm with you on that. Like, it's not really the moral part that I'm saying is important. It's the purity test part, right? If you look at a lot of sort of political and cultural dialogue outside the Bitcoin space, the way that it works is that somebody says something that's like slightly wrong or that's perceived to be offensive, and then everybody views it as this like mask drop moment where like, oh, we're seeing their true colors, right? And
well, I would say in that situation, the question is, does the person double down, or do they admit, like,
so the problem is that I think this kind of like, basically what I'm saying is that if people want to be like once a shitcoiner, always a shitcoiner, well, I don't know. It depends.
But that's definitely not the case.
Yeah,
a lot of us went through shitcoins. Yeah, and that's how we learned.
That's essentially the thing. And I also like, I'm like, for example, like I'm like, we've decided that like some shit. I mean, like some shitcoinery is so egregious that it's like not welcome even like mentioning it in project spaces, on Ordinal's project spaces.
Right.
So in particular, BSV is like, I don't even consider that. I don't think that somebody's involvement in that is such a strong negative signal, and we have such a high moderation burden,
right?
And they're attacking Bitcoin that I'm like, no.
It's a very easy heuristic.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is like, oh, somebody has fucking .eth in there. Like, let me go back to me talking about this personally. Like, you gotta reel me in, okay? You know this, okay? So like, I think that people should look at what I did, for example, when I worked on Grid, and be like, I was honestly excited about Grin. I was like, the privacy technology is very cool, right? Bitcoin doesn't have privacy. Or the privacy on Bitcoin is very nuanced. Bitcoin doesn't have privacy. Please don't clip that. The privacy on Bitcoin is very nuanced, right? You've got to know how to use it. The tools are tricky. You don't really get like kind of one and done privacy. You get this privacy that you fight for with complicated technical things like on-chain swaps and coin joins and Lightning Network. But anyways, Bitcoin didn't have privacy. And so I saw Grin and I was like, okay, like this is interesting. It's doing something very different from Bitcoin. And I was like excited about it, right? And if people want to say like I was doing something morally wrong, I don't know. I just didn't, I don't know if I would say that I made a miscalculation, but you might disagree with it. But I don't think it says anything really about my character. And I think that is very prominent in a lot of Bitcoin politics, where you're like, everything gets very personal very quickly. and people are getting really nasty.
Well, I think it's also like it's also Twitter. Like it's the
Yeah.
incentives of Twitter that don't have much nuance.
Yeah.
But I mean, there are a lot of people, there are a lot of influencers and promoters and then whatnot that straight up scammed people. They didn't disclose trade-offs. They intentionally just didn't disclose trade-offs. They misled people. And then after they did that, they, instead of having a self-reflection, right? Like personal responsibility in this space, I think, has two sides of a coin, right?
Yep.
There's personal responsibility on the influencer promoter side, people with audiences, and there's personal responsibility on the individuals, right? You know, ultimately it sucks to say it, right? But if you lose your money in the space, you get scammed or whatnot, that's partially your fault, and you need to have an introspection on how you let that happen. But then it's also the promoter's fault, right? And we see a lot of times where the promoters go, they make a shit ton of money, then they just try and whitewash history. They don't actually have any introspection. They don't take any culpability or responsibility over their actions, and that's extremely frustrating. It's horrible to see. And at the end of the day, like there's basically, you know, what you said, I don't like the left side of the bell curve. I don't like IQ shaming people, but it's a very easy
being on the left side of the curve is not about IQ.
It's a very easy heuristic to just say that anyone who's involved is a scammer, right? Because just there's been so many instances, right? So then people jump to that side, and they don't want to actually necessarily have the hard conversations.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And like, you know, there are certain people who, like, I think that the thing is that it's not a moral purity test. I don't really care about who's a bad person, and a good person. Well, no, I do a lot deeply. But like, it's like if somebody runs a scam and then it's not a moral purity test. It's not that they're like, whatever. It's that's such a strong negative signal about their character and their like what they're going to do in the future. Right. That's the issue, right? I'm interested in preventing bad outcomes, not having philosophical debates about like what's moral and what's not, right? So like there are people who, like, I have every single shitcoiner in my DMs, like straight up, they're all trying to latch onto this, and they're all trying to. So like, for example, Stacks, like Stacks is this. I mean, I don't even know if we should fucking censor it because I hate signal boosting these people.
I mean, yeah, they can go. So they're an example.
They're a fucking affinity scam.
There's someone I wouldn't have on dispatch.
Oh yeah, like, no, dude, you shouldn't let them in the park, bro.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, yeah, like, I mean, I'm trying to navigate this
nuance on that
very carefully, but like we are thinking about having a policy that if you have a .btc, let me just explain my thoughts on Stacks. So Stacks claims that they are Bitcoin. Okay. Stacks claims that they're like a Bitcoin L2, but they have a shitcoin. Okay, so
they have a perpetual. Their way they.
I don't want to know about their shitcoin,
it's like
bro.
A perpetual ICO is the way they essentially peg into Bitcoin.
I don't even understand this like bullshit. I don't want to use their. I don't want to dignify their tech with using their stupid fucking words. Like they have some consensus mechanism that's like thematically related to Bitcoin, and then they go off and say that they're Bitcoin and they have .btc domains. Like, if Ordinals is proof of anything, it's proof that you can fucking build on Bitcoin and you don't need a fucking token. If I had added a token, everybody would be rightfully ignoring my fucking bullshit, right? Yeah. These Stacks guys, they're like, oh, we need DeFi on Bitcoin. And instead of doing what like RGB and Taro and DLCs and whatever are doing, they decided to add a token. And tokens, my problem, I have so many problems with adding a token. Like, there's so many things wrong with it. But one very practical problem is it makes shit worse. Your users can't just download your software and use it. They have to like go on an exchange and get a token. Like, there's so many fucking problems with the token. Anyways, but yeah, like, yes, Stacks is, I like to say, it's functionally an affinity scam. I don't know what is in the Stacks people's hearts, and I don't care, right? So I don't want to say it's a.
Well, you have to separate the promoters from the individuals, I think.
Oh, sure, but a lot of the promoters are not technically sophisticated at all. Like, they can't tell, like they've never successfully.
It was like
used
2017 again. I got into a huge fight with the Stacks people like 8 months ago, and then I had to read their white paper for like 4 hours just so that that I could actively like argue properly against them.
I mean, I think the way to argue properly against Stacks is to say that they are thematically related to Bitcoin, right? It's like they're Bitcoin themed, right? like if McDonald's wanted to open a new like fucking fast food joint and put the orange bee on things, right? That's one thing. And then functionally, they're an affinity scam. People who are unsophisticated see it, and their branding is very confusing. They tell people that it's Bitcoin, but like they have a fucking token, and like that's the line in the sand, you know?
Okay, so let's just pull it back because we got derailed a little bit. You were shitcoining with Grin.
Yeah,
Let's
shitcoining
continue
with
on your
Grin.
journey.
Yeah, shitcoining with Grin. I had this very, I think I wrote kind of into my contract that they couldn't fire me, and so I had this thing where they were like paying me. Whatever. I won't get into details, but yeah, I sort of was getting paid, and like I didn't have
So
to
was
do.
this like 2017 or something?
When
Like
I didn't.
the Grin hype was like
I feel like it was
early 2018 maybe or something.
something like that. Yeah. And it like really the lesson from that was that I thought the reason that I thought Grin was cool was not because it had better tech than Bitcoin, but because it had an interesting technical thing that it did that Bitcoin didn't do. And what that essentially, Grin was basically, I don't want to say a failure because actually they still have small communities,
It's
some
a
devs,
complete
right?
failure.
Well, price wise, it's a failure,
Yeah.
right? Like nobody, okay,
And
if no,
adoption wise,
yeah,
use case wise,
yeah,
there's no need for it.
sure. I mean, like whatever. Like it's I would say adoption wise, it's definitely a failure. I'm very uncomfortable with like it's a failure. I don't know. They have a small. I mean, I don't want to like speak
Nothing goes
positive.
to zero in this space, so they always like linger around for years.
Yeah, but I mean, it's like there's all like is a small project that has. Let's say you make an open source tool, right? And you have a small number of users, and like it never gets any adoption, right? And like they're still building it and like having fun. Like I feel uncomfortable saying
Okay, fine.
that's
Fair
a
enough.
failure. You
Fair
know what I
enough.
mean? Like there's going to be
It
small.
was super hyped though.
Yeah, super hyped, and
There was
it
a lot of us who said like it wasn't going to go anywhere, and it didn't go anywhere.
didn't go anywhere. Did not live up to people's expectations
Okay.
at all. These are things I'm very comfortable saying. So that kind of taught me that having some sort of particular, debatable technical advantage over Bitcoin doesn't make a difference. Bitcoin has so much network effect, so many developers, like so much like goodwill that you're just not going to ever compete with Bitcoin. And in fact, I wasn't really interested in competing with or supplanting Bitcoin, right? So yeah, anyway, so then I just kind of did my own thing for a while. I worked on a bunch of random projects. I've done a lot of generative digital art, like generative like audio reactive visuals for live music. Can I just freely shill my website and like my projects, but that are like pure Bitcoin or like unrelated to Bitcoin?
Yeah, what's your website?
Rodarmor.com. You can
There
see
you
all
go.
my like weird ass fucking art on there, shit like that. So yeah, I just did, and there's like no shitcoin links there. So
And then so what? We were
so
like in like
yeah, so and then I worked on one thing I worked on was Agora. Agora is a web server. It's basically a file server that you pay for things with
well
Lightning.
before Agora even existed,
Mm.
you introduced me to Eric Sirion,
I don't
right?
I just yeah, I mean that was like very early when Fediment was happening, and
Yeah, I just want to put that out there that, Casey just blind Telegram messaged me, said, "I'm a huge fan of Dispatch. Like, you need to talk to this guy, my buddy Eric. He has this crazy idea of Fediment." And like Fediment at that point was maybe he was even calling it mini mint at that
it
point.
was confusing. There was a
And
Fediment protocol and a mini mint
but it was like
implementation.
just in his it was in his head. Like he barely even had it like written down or anything. It was like very early. It was super early on, and it was what started me down the Fediment rabbit hole.
Yeah,
So and introduced me to Eric. So I'm super appreciative of that.
for sure.
And then you told me about your project Agora.
Yeah, an Agora is a file server that you put some files on a computer, and then you in a config file say how much you want people to pay for them in sats, and then when people try to download the file they get a paywall. It's all open source. It's at github.com/agora-org/agora. I don't maintain it at all anymore. There's still some active users and people who are interested in it. I think there's a fork. I don't know if it's maintained or not, but
You could like buy and sell files for Bitcoin.
yeah, and like what I always wanted people to do was basically create a pirate Netflix.
Right.
Like the ideal use case for Agora is you get a computer somewhere, and you put like like you get one of those like you get like a few enterprise grade 20 terabyte hard disks, and you put every single movie that's ever been released on there, and people pay you 10 sats a movie to download them. That was the plan, but nobody really took the bait. So it just didn't get popular. And I did that with my friend Zunka. So shout out to Zunka. He's a G. And then I kind of
When did you start running SF Bit Devs?
oh, that wasn't that long ago. Yeah, so 8 months ago, I was always a huge SF Bitcoin Devs fan. So I would show up, and Alex Leishman at River, who is a G, was hosting it, and it was kind of going. He wouldn't do it super often, like because he's super busy. And every time it would go like 2 months without an SF Bit Devs, I would email him and be like, "Hey, let me know if there's anything I can do to help to like make the meetup go faster, whatever." And then he was no longer able to run it due to other responsibilities. And like the last SF Bit Devs that he hosted, I was there and he just grabbed me. He was like, "Hey, do you want to run the meetup?" And I was like, "Yeah, let's go." Um, and so then in collaboration with Bay Area Bitcoiners who are just like grassroots Bay Area meta meetup, there's like 5 locations. I started hosting SF Bitcoin Devs. I think I've done it like 8 times maybe. So I think it's been almost a year since I started hosting it. That's like a whole nother thing. I was fucking terrified the first time. Like,
It's hard to run a Bit Devs.
bro, it's
A
crazy.
lot of responsibility.
Yeah.
Very technical.
The thing that you got to realize if you're a Bit Devs host is like sometimes I bring things up and I'm like, I read this, but I didn't understand anything. Does anybody have any idea like what this is talking about? Some like deep crypto wizardry. And then I will be like, if nobody has anything to add, we'll just move on to the next item. Or somebody is like super knowledgeable on the subject and they'll pipe up and tell everybody about it. But it's like you gotta understand that Bitcoin is so broad and so deep that you can't know everything, and you need to be comfortable with your role as a facilitator and not necessarily as some wizard that's going
Right.
to tell everybody everything.
You're
Yeah.
the QB. You don't necessarily have to know everything.
Yeah, that's right. You just got to get the ball to the right person. Got to
And
move
I
it.
think a good Bit Devs, like we were talking about Nash Bit Devs this week. It was just like I knew it was a good Bit Devs because I didn't understand 50% of what was being discussed.
Yeah.
It should challenge the majority of people in the room should be challenged.
Oh, yeah.
If it's going to be a good
Yeah.
Bit Devs.
Yep. So yeah, I did that. Been doing that for 9 months. The Bay Area has a really thriving meetup scene. There's like Bay Area Bitcoiners. There's probably like 1 or 2 to 3 things a week in different locations. And then there's sort of separate orgs. Like me and one of the Bay Area Bitcoiners run the SF Bitcoin Devs, but then there's also all these other grassroots groups meetups. So I guess let me go. I think it's good to touch on like what I thought about NFTs at the time, because that kind of informs like why I'm doing this whole thing.
Okay.
Yeah. So NFTs, I saw NFTs in 2017, and I was like, I thought it was an interesting idea, but the art was like not very interesting to me. And so as a result, I just kind of forgot about them. And then I think in 2019 or 2020, I saw some really amazing art. I sort of don't want to name names, but like I think that when people see NFTs, they think like the like monkey JPEGs. That's what everybody thinks, and that's why I
Like
wasn't.
loss trading and pump and dumps.
Yeah, sure,
Tons of scams.
tons of scams. Yeah. And so but I saw art which I really liked, and not only was it art that I really liked, but it was exactly the kind of art that I had made in the past. So sort of algorithmic programmer art.
Right.
And there was a market for that. And there were real collectors who really appreciated it. And I thought to myself, this is really cool. Like I don't I think that there are a lot of scams, and maybe like 90, I don't even know what the number is, but I'm
Probably like as close to 100% as you can get to.
I have a nuanced view on this.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
That's my view.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think sure. So I saw something that I thought that in some cases was really the moral equivalent of buying a painting and selling it, especially the high end NFTs. The low end is like, yeah. And obviously like there's a lot of, well, yeah, we can get into the ethical issues, but so I saw a market develop for exactly the kind of art that I had made. And I thought, okay, like maybe I can make and sell ERC 721 NFTs, which are Ethereum NFTs. I don't like Ethereum. I think Ethereum is completely centralized. I think their monetary policy is a joke. They're sort of these like space. I think they're either like disingenuous scammers, or they are these sort of like space cadet types who don't really understand the problems with the Rube Goldberg machines that they're building. So I'm very negative on Ethereum. But I was like, okay, well, if I'm like making Ethereum NFTs, maybe that is okay. Maybe that's like me buying and selling a painting. So I looked into it. And I had written some Solidity for a joke ICO that like didn't raise any money, that was just supposed to make fun of it. If you search for Synthorn, they're in like, it's like a 2017 like ICO. Like literally I did not sell one. It was a synthetic rhino horn dick pills on the blockchain.
Oof.
Yeah. And it was literally like a parody piece at the time to make fun of ICOs. And it was an ERC20 token. And like there are like people who are like, it's kind of funny. There are people who took it seriously because everything was so insane at the time. So I'd written that Solidity contract. And to be clear, that wasn't like a money making thing. That was literally parody. It was literally like code as parody. So then I started looking into ERC 721 and looking on how NFTs on Ethereum works. And this is a very deep topic, but what I found was overwhelmingly negative. Like overwhelmingly negative technical problems, overwhelmingly negative social problems, overwhelmingly negative business practices, including some subtle ones that people don't really understand that I think are very important that relate to data availability. And I decided that like it wouldn't be a problem for me to make an NFT, but I could not encourage anybody to buy it from me. Like I would have to, the list of disclaimers would have to be so long, where I'd be like, listen, like you need to understand Ethereum's security properties, which are terrible, and its like development direction, which is terrible, in order to be an informed consumer to even pay me $10 for this like NFT. So I decided that I could not do that. And I didn't do it. Like I'll avoid like sucking my own dick too much. Can I swear?
Of course you can.
Okay.
My grandmother asked me how I haven't gotten kicked off the radio yet since I curse so much.
Okay, so
Because
I won't.
I told her I have a radio show because I didn't think she could comprehend what a podcast was.
Bro, that's beautiful. Your grandmother thinks you on the radio. She must be so proud. So I won't suck my own dick too much, but I will say like I could have made tens of millions of dollars just like making Ethereum NFTs and not promising everything and just doing it on the strength of my art.
Right.
Like it's a very small niche, this like algorithmic art, and there's not that many people who are so good at it, but I didn't. I decided like, no. So,
and to be clear, like the algorithmic art is where we see like these massive NFT collections, right? Where it like changes depending on
massive. Like how many pieces?
I mean, like the original was like CryptoKitties. Is that what you mean by algorithmic
Absolutely
art?
not. Yeah. It's hard to differentiate. I don't like naming names because
like I don't really I've like mostly tried to do blinders on the NFT space.
Oh yeah.
Understanding is
no,
like
no. Yeah, no, not like 10K 10,000 PFPs, like not like Bored Ape Yacht. I'm not talking about Bored Ape Yacht.
And that like changes based on like a random number or something provided by on-chain, right? Or something like that. And it changes different heuristics of the different
there's so many different kinds. The thing that I started to see that I thought was interesting was one called art blocks. So they're algorithmic generative art. They're usually abstract. They look like abstract paintings.
Got it.
Yeah, and they do smaller runs in terms of the number of pieces in a collection, because you have this algorithm that a programmer writes that generates abstract art, looks like maybe you could do one that looks like Rothko paintings, and then each one kind of looks like a different Rothko painting. And the best ones of those, obviously, there's scam examples of everything, but the best ones of those are usually like shorter form, like there's like 100 or there's like 400, and each one takes a random seed as input and gives you this image. And to be clear, this is not something that like needs a blockchain. You can just make these images on your computer, but those, and they can be very beautiful to my mind, like very like staggeringly beautiful. And so I'm absolutely not talking about 10K PFPs. That's like when I say 10K PFPs, like it's 10,000 piece profile
like
picture. Yeah, monkey JPEGs.
Right.
Yeah, I did not create this because I find monkey JPEGs interesting. There's some things, I mean, like, again, nuanced opinion about a lot of things. Community is interesting, but yeah, there's a lot of fucking scams and a lot of things that are just ugly and stupid looking.
Okay, so you sucked your own dick.
Yep.
You could
Done
have made
sucking my,
millions of dollars.
yeah, that's right, but I didn't. Okay.
I mean, I think that's why a lot of us have chips on our shoulders too, right? Like
I mean,
and I just want to say right now, freaks, while we're 40 minutes in already, you know, I've tried very hard to, you know, put a lot of effort into trying building out Dispatch the right way and making audience funded. And there's been a lot of people throughout the years that, you know, have said, you know, oh,
yeah,
release an NFT series or something to fund it because people will
yep.
pay you way more money than you're receiving on donations. And I have intentionally tried to make the show as radically transparent as possible, which is why you can go to geyser.fund and see all the donations. And, you know, I'm a privacy advocate, but you can see how much in donations has come to Dispatch because I want it to be out there. But I will unequivocally say that regardless of Inscriptions being on Bitcoin, and we're going to get into all the technical specifics and stuff, like there will be no Odell NFTs being sold or no Dispatch NFTs being sold to fund the show, period, unequivocally. Okay,
Cool.
let's continue.
So yeah, so in early, I think early 2022, like January, maybe earlier, maybe late 2021, I was like, okay, well, I can't do this on Ethereum. I guess I need to figure out how to do this on Bitcoin.
Well, I think an interesting thing would be like, can we just quickly talk about like the technical issues of how they have Ethereum NFTs set up? Besides, you know, obviously the issues with the chain and
Yeah.
whatnot, but like
Oh, sure. Just focus.
OpenSea and like
Oh,
how
man.
it's basically just pointing to a link on IPFS.
Yeah, there's more than that. So like, yeah, but yeah, like, I mean, Ethereum NFTs, usually so on Ethereum, let's talk specifics. An Ethereum NFT is anything that implements the ERC 721 spec. And if it implements the spec, then it has a function called token URI that returns a URL where you can fetch the metadata for the NFT. And a URL is just something you type into your browser, you know, window, like HTTP, whatever. They can point to different places, they can be different protocols. And many ERC 721 NFTs point to just Amazon web servers, just somebody's web server. So you and one of my problem with this is about transparency and consumer protection. Like, if somebody buys an NFT for thousands of dollars and you sell it to them and they don't fully understand the fact that it's pointing on somebody's web server, and that new owner of that expensive object is relying on the good graces of a third party to make that object continue to function, I think that's completely irresponsible.
And like a perfect example is we saw some people did NFT series that FTX was hosting on their servers. So when those servers got taken down in the bankruptcy, they literally just, their image wasn't there anymore.
Yeah, exactly. And some of them also point to IPFS. So IPFS is not a well-designed system. It's basically a very poor version of BitTorrent.
Yeah, I don't understand the incentives of it at all.
There are no incentives. It has the incentives of BitTorrent.
Okay.
You should think of it as a NIH, not invented here, BitTorrent with technical decisions that make it worse. So some NFTs point to IPFS. That is not good either, because essentially when anybody can seed it, which makes it a little bit better than
hosting on ftx.com.
Yeah, but when the last seeder goes away, that content is gone. And similarly, I think if you sell somebody something that the content is on BitTorrent hosted by other people, you need to tell them how to do it. You need to explain this to them. You need to explain the trade-offs. You need to give them tools, realistically, because users are non-technical, to automatically host their own content. It can't be like, oh yeah, go to this guide and do some crazy shit that nobody's ever going to do. You can't even do that. You have to make it so that it's like one click, you know, or like they can easily pay somebody so at least they understand what the economic incentives are. So I think that's irresponsible. That's like one tier above just somebody's web server. One tier that's actually probably below both of them is like these decentralized storage platforms. Like, I don't even want to name names. Like, well, I'll just call them out, like Filecoin and Arweave. So those are basically algorithmic stable coins that are pegged to the price of storage, right? And when the price of the token goes below the price of the storage, the system catastrophically fails because nobody's willing to host content anymore because they're just getting
Right.
Yeah. So those are probably worse than the other two even. And there are some Ethereum NFTs that do have content that is on chain. There are some, and I like those communities a lot. But even then, an ERC 721 contract is a big blob of code. And to understand, and that token URI, it's not like it's hard coded and it can't change. It's just some code that returns that token URI. And if there, this is like the sort of meta problem with ERC 721. It's an interface and not an implementation. So the interface just kind of tells you how it behaves, right?
Okay.
But the implementation, what it actually does is different on a token by token basis. So you need to audit your JPEGs.
Don't trust verify.
Yeah, if you want to really understand, I mean, even this, we're not even talking about all the problems with Ethereum because it inherits all the problems of Ethereum.
Right.
For you to be an informed consumer of an ERC 721 token, you need to audit every single NFT because they're all different. They could all have backdoor keys. They could all have bugs.
Right.
Many of them have mutability built in so that you can just, the developer can just change the image, right?
Right. And this is completely separate from like the foundation of, if you buy something, like, will Ethereum still be there in 10 years or 15 years or whatever?
Exactly. Yeah. And Ethereum has already made, so anyway, so there are some on-chain Ethereum, there are Ethereum NFTs, there are ERC 721s that have on-chain content. And they actually have these, like, this is one thing I'll say about like NFTs on Ethereum. There are really cool artists and collectors who are really into the art that are there. And I think this is going to be hard for Bitcoiners to hear. Like some Bitcoiners, I mean, like kind of like left curve maxis, like you need to understand that like when there are lots of people who saw NFTs and it was marketed to them as amazing digital art that's forever on the blockchain, and they saw pictures that they loved and spoke to them for whatever reason, or they were artists who it's very hard to make money as an artist, they were like awesome. And these are unsophisticated people, right? These are, well, not that unsophisticated, but they're not technical people, right? They don't understand anything about solidity or whatever. That's just completely another universe. So these are good people, and a lot of them are creative, and they make amazing stuff. So, anyways, but we're talking problems with the tech. So the problem with the tech is that there's no consumer protection, right? It's like the Wild West. Nobody knows what they're getting. This is really my issue, right? If somehow you got everybody in that space to be informed consumers of what they're buying, like whatever, go fucking crazy. Like people like to gamble, right? Like you lose money by gambling. But I mean, moral things like if somebody is an informed roulette player, that's fine, right? If you're telling people that it's like, but if you're like Ponzi scheming people and saying it's a guaranteed thing, like that's another thing. So I could go into this for days, but yeah. So
we have time.
Yeah, lots of problems with Ethereum NFTs. And so I just started noodling on how to do it on Bitcoin. And so I came up with Ordinals, which is it is a lens that you view the Bitcoin base layer through that lets you track individual sats. Normal Bitcoiners unaffected, just ignore it.
Is that an attack on fungibility?
No. You got to be more specific.
I mean, I see like people like buying like a sat for like 10 million sats or something.
Does that affect you?
I mean, one sat equals one sat, right?
Yeah.
I mean, at the protocol level, it doesn't change anything.
No.
Okay.
What I'm saying is that
I think I knew the answer to that question, but I have you on here, and
yeah. I mean, so I think that
to me, the ordinal stuff is just like complete nonsense.
That's fine. That's where I
To be
want
clear.
Bitcoiners to be. Like,
Okay.
yeah, like
Like you first told me about it like 9 months ago or something like that. You're like, "Matt, don't be mad at me. I'm doing this thing."
I was so scared to tell Matt about ordinals because he's like a big privacy guy, and I feel like it's easy to think that it has a negative effect on privacy. But let me say specifically what you said. Is this an attack on fungibility? And you said, and I said, like, well, what's the specific issue?
One sat equals one sat.
No, that's not. You didn't. What's the problem? If somebody over there wants to pay 10 sat for their shiny rare Pokemon sat, like, what's the problem?
Yeah, I mean, I yeah, I guess that is their prerogative. I guess the concern I have with the scheme is that maybe it goes back to promoters again. So then maybe that's not even a fungibility concern.
I totally agree with those
Um,
concerns about
we're like
scamming shit.
seeing like influencers and stuff being like, "Buy my sat for 10 million sats,"
Well,
when it's the same sat.
sure, but I mean, you've got to say, can somebody make and sell a painting? Is that like a legitimate thing to do?
Yeah, I think people can make and sell paintings. Yeah. But
Okay.
that's now we're going to that's if we go into inscriptions, which I want the majority of conversation to be on
Oh, well, there are
inscriptions.
rare and exotic sats that people might wish to collect that are like,
But I don't think I mean, it's only through, like, this, like, theology kind of created, like, you've, like, kind of, like, created, like, this almost, like, religion level
well, I would say that it's an
ordering scheme
yeah, I'd say
that,
that
like a
it's
lens what are you calling it? A lens on
yeah. So I mean, things are arbitrary. Isn't Bitcoin pretty arbitrary?
in a lot of ways, yeah.
So, but a lot of people like it and use it, right?
Yeah.
And that kind of makes it not arbitrary anymore.
Right.
So things can be arbitrary
So, I
for
mean,
some
so what
people.
if we had, like, and maybe it's not a useful theoretical or whatever, but we had a ordinal like scheme where instead of so like my basic very rudiment because I tried just to be clear, freaks, and if you listen to Rabbit Hole Recap, you've heard me say it like when Casey first
In one ear, out the
when
other is what
Casey
I heard.
well when Casey first told me about it, I was hoping I could just ignore it and just never talk about it. Period. Never look into it. Never talk about it. But here we are. My mempool is full.
But
And I need
how
to
many
have this
sats to get into the
conversation.
next block?
We have mempool.space up on the screen right now. It looks like 3.
Wow, that's weird. Mempool's full. 3 sats to get into the next block. What's going on?
Yeah, there's a
Seems
lot of 1 sat per biters.
seems pretty chill, if you ask
For
me.
now, I think things are gonna heat up, but we can get into that conversation separately. But okay, so the way my basic left side of the curve understanding here is that it's based on like if it's the first sat of a new block or first sat of a new difficulty adjustment, like that's where like the quote unquote rarity comes from on the individual ordinal sats.
Yeah, if it's
Um,
so there's
but you
each
could have a scheme where it's like
Mhm.
if it's a KYC UTXO,
Uh-huh.
like if it's like a a whitelisted Bitcoin UTXO or whatever, right? Like
Mhm.
a cuck Bitcoin UTXO,
Mhm.
then it's more valuable than if it's a post coin join UTXO or something like that. And then all of a sudden you have that would be an attack on fungibility.
Yeah, but I'm not doing that.
Right. How does CoinJoin mix into this whole thing? Like all my UTXOs have collaborative transaction history. Does that mean I lost my rare sats from like post difficulty adjustments and stuff?
I don't think so. The way that coin joins work is that when you put I mean, ordinal theory is deep and wide, but when you put sats into a coin join, when you put UTXOs into a coin join, first off, like it doesn't change anything from a privacy perspective. If you're a so you basically you put in some sats with particular ordinal numbers on one side, and you get back sats that are the same or different ordinal numbers on the other side, just arbitrarily from the inputs. So you get some random sats that I'm still trying to figure this out if it's confusing for me to say you get random sats, or maybe I should say only you get random ordinals to make it clear that like really sats are destroyed in every transaction and new ones are created. And to a
Because you
normal
really have UTXOs, and there's the
well, yeah,
UTXOs are destroyed and created.
right, but yeah, the terminology is still whatever, but like
You haven't fully written your Bible yet.
no, absolutely not. So like we're still in the early apostles.
Could it incentivize
It could incentivize people to join CoinJoin rounds because they want to
try and get?
They want to skim off rare sats. Yeah. So
That's good. We could use some incentivization on that front.
yeah, and it also incentivizes people to that's probably good if they want to join CoinJoin rounds. It incentivizes people to deposit and exchange hot wallets and then withdraw.
That's not a great incentive.
I don't know. Like, yeah, that's not great.
I guess they're using the chain in that situation at least, right?
Yeah, at least they know how to get their coins off an exchange.
Right.
Because they get random sats out. So yeah, I think
I
it's
don't
really
understand this ordinal stuff at all.
You can get it. It's no big deal. It's just like each block creates each block mines some number of sats. Each block, those sats have an ordinal number. Ordinal number is assigned in the order in which they're mined. First block 0 to 50 billion. I can see Matthew's eyes glazing over there. First block 0 to 5 billion. Second block 5 to 10 billion. And this is like, this is a fantasy. This is Pokemon. Okay. And then when those sats go into a transaction, when they're like in that UTXO, and when they go into a transaction, they're we pretend that they're in a list essentially in each UTXO in a little stack, and then they just go over like this from the inputs to the outputs. So the first sat in the first input becomes the first sat. First sat in the first input is destroyed, and then its ordinal number is assigned to the first sat of the first output, right? It's like that, and they just kind of split. The mempool.space flow diagrams?
Yeah.
It's exactly like that, except they put the fee on the top. I take the fee out of the bottom.
Okay, I think ordinals I can at least personally safely ignore. They're just a complete external lens on Bitcoin that I just don't have to prescribe to, and I can just continue to do my own thing.
Absolutely.
Just continue to stay humble and stacking sats regardless of their ordinal number.
That's entirely correct.
Now, inscriptions, I don't think I can ignore. Inscriptions, this idea of writing arbitrary data, any data you really want, into the Bitcoin chain, and propagating it throughout the network. So let's jump into inscriptions.
Yeah. So it's important to note that for any shared resource, multiple people will want to use that shared resource. So you ride the bus, other people want to ride the bus gets full and you have to wait.
Right.
That's like the deal.
Because buses don't have a fee market. You can't just pay more and then someone gets kicked off the bus.
Well, if we had some private market buses, then we would have a fee market for buses. It's called capitalism.
Right.
So we would have more entrepreneurs building more buses, and people find maybe somebody could have a way that you don't actually need to, get on the bus, or you only need to get on the bus once, and then the bus can take you a bunch of different places. And then you then get off the bus when you're done, but you've gone to all these different places. And we could call this the lightning bus. And different people would find ways to use things more efficiently. So yeah, there could easily be the fee market. Fee markets exist in regular markets, right? When a lot of people want something, price goes up. So common mechanism. But yeah, Bitcoin, shared resource. When other people want to use it, you got to pay more. And that's always been the intention and the plan for Bitcoin. That's how we've always known that it's going to work.
Right.
Yeah.
There'll be full blocks, and then people will pay a fee if they want to be included or not.
That's right.
And that fee will change based on market dynamics.
Yeah. And people are going to use Bitcoin, the asset, for things that you don't understand, right? They're going to want to go buy a bunch of I don't know, Femboy Fox, Femboy Fox posters or something, and you're not into Femboy Foxes, but other people are going to want to use Bitcoin for that. So kind of from your point of view, if you think that inscriptions are spam, I think you kind of also have to argue that these other uses of Bitcoin that you don't care about or aren't involved with, it would be consistent for you to say that those are spam as well. Right? That's the way that Bitcoin works, is people use it for things that you don't know about and you don't care about. And if you want them not to do that, well, you can try to push for censorship. But yeah, that's kind of the deal with Bitcoin,
Okay, so inscriptions.
Yep.
What are they?
So, I mean, do you want me to talk about this through the lens of ordinal theory or in the normal Bitcoiner?
I mean, the latter.
Normal Bitcoiner.
I think the ordinal theory stuff just confuses everything.
Well,
At the end of the day, there's people writing arbitrary data on the chain.
So when you say
and paying
everybody,
a
I
fee
think it
attached to
includes
it.
some people, but some people want to use this and they need to understand how it works. And so metaphors are a very important way of
Okay, so
teaching people.
go.
Okay. So I'll do normal Bitcoiner. So people make transactions where they make they have transactions with large witnesses. They put a lot of these transactions of very large witnesses. That's the normie Bitcoiner way of putting it.
Right.
That's kind of it.
Right. So let's just go. Let's pull it back for a second. What is the witness portion?
So in SegWit, for a variety of reasons, it was decided that certain kinds of data, certain kinds of transaction data in an individual transaction should be moved outside of the sort of what had been the main transaction. And this included things like signatures and scripts. And what this was done for a number of reasons that we can get into. And they did this for a large number of reasons, and they created this additional data structure called the witness. That Bitcoin kind of has these two Merkle trees. It has the transaction Merkle tree, and then in a Coinbase output op return, it has a commitment to this other Merkle tree of witnesses. And new types of Bitcoin addresses, like Taproot and SegWit, they put all their signatures and all their scripts and all this stuff in this witness.
Right. So basically, we had a block size of 1 meg, and then we added this witness portion that essentially allowed us to increase the block size to 4 megs, more or less.
Well, the way I think, it's like you are allowed to, in a block, you can have up to 4 million bytes of witness data, and then you must subtract every non-witness byte multiplied by 4 from that budget. So you have a 4 million byte limit, and each witness byte counts for 1 when you're ticking down that limit. And then each non-witness byte, essentially all the old bytes, that counts for 4. So the witness bytes tick that down slower, and
right,
the
so
non-witness
you can only
bytes
have a 4 meg block if it's all witness data.
Yeah, and we've seen a 4 meg block.
Right, but
we call them a 4 megger.
But in practice, it allowed a soft fork block size increase.
Yes, and also it was done for a variety of other like beneficial reasons. It fixed transaction malleability. It encouraged people to use clean up their UTXOs, and at the time, a block size increase.
But to me, I want to I just wanted to be very clear in here, because to me, to people that are concerned that we will have essentially 4 meg blocks going forward, or maybe slightly less, depending on how much non-witness data is in there as well. And the implications of the general implications of why you don't want to have more data is mostly bandwidth constraints. This idea that the more data that's being shared around the network makes it more expensive to run a node, and also centralizes miners to a degree. It gives large miners an advantage, and so because of block propagation, right? So if they have a large amount of hash, they are able to essentially have a head start on the next block and solving the next block. And this is why block size increases in Bitcoin have always been, relatively conservative, relatively taboo. But if that's the concern, the original sin was SegWit increasing the size, because the assumption at that point should always be, and was for a lot of us, was that those blocks would be full going forward and the fee market would develop.
Yeah, we signed up for 4 meg blocks when we did so.
That was the original sin. If that's the concern,
I wouldn't use the word sin.
But if that's the concern,
That's
if the
right.
concern is increased bandwidth requirements.
Yep. Well, there's actually multiple concerns, like IBD, initial block download.
Right.
There's verifying signatures. So and that's actually
on the compute side.
Yeah, on the compute side, CPU. So verifying signatures is very expensive, make up a lot of the time of IBD. Even if you have if you have a very slow connection, first thing you're limited by is just downloading the data.
Right.
Once you get a fat connection and you're downloading like gigs a second, that's no longer your limitation. And actually way earlier, that's no longer your limitation. Your next limitation is things like signature verification, right? So signature verification is expensive. People like Peter Willa are doing God's work, making it faster. And then there's even more than that. So that's like, these are short term, that's like CPU and bandwidth. But then in the long term, bigger blocks mean that the UTXO set size can grow at a larger rate.
Right.
Right? If we had comedy 4 gig size blocks like the BSVers are are fucking around with, like the UTXO set size could grow at an enormous rate until you had to have a computer with like sort of like 64 gigs of RAM. Right? So there's actually a lot of subtle issues with raising the block size.
Right.
Not just the sort of minor.
And there's a natural incentive for people to not have many UTXOs in a sustained high fiat market.
That's right. So in a way, actually,
and you saw that like when the 2017 spam attacks were happening.
Yeah.
Like there was massive UTXO consolidation because fees were going up and people didn't want to get stuck with unspendable outputs.
Yeah, that's right. So for a lot of reasons, we did this SegWit thing, and now we have this thing called the witness. It does not allow for arbitrary data storage. It gets a discount, but I would argue that discount, that discount in that it ticks down.
Right.
I would not argue it ticks down the 4 million byte budget slower than other bytes, but those were done for a wide variety of technical reasons that benefit financially dense Bitcoin transactions. And so that was what opened the door in a way. But let me be clear, Ordinals would have worked on Satoshi's day one client, and Inscriptions would also have worked. I could have figured out a way if I had really started noodling on this, and I was as far along in my Bitcoin journey in 2009 where I wasn't even aware of it. Like I could have written this on day one, day one. Yeah. So yeah. So for normal Bitcoiners and an inscription. So an inscription is when
they would have been much smaller.
No, they would have been much larger on day one because of the original block limit was like actually like 4 gigs or something.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So
and then Satoshi lowered it.
Yeah, it's quietly. Back when we used to get quiet upgrades to Bitcoin that nobody disagreed about.
Just like shipped an update.
Yep.
Yeah.
So yeah, actually, you're lucky I didn't think of it. You're lucky I wasn't on the Cypherpunks mailing list. So, although I should really be clear, I'm not a big blocker, and I've been telling everybody I will resist any sort of talk of a block size increase. As far as I know, it hasn't been a problem on our Discord, but if there was people on our Discord who wanted to start talking about a block size increase, I'd be like, that's off topic, and I would start I'd start timing out people and banning them. Like that's not something I'm interested in.
So you believe in censorship in that level?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, like you choose who to have on, so you believe on censorship.
They could have their own Discord or whatever.
Like you censor? Do you censor people when you don't have them on Citadel Dispatch?
So, yeah.
If that's censorship, then yeah. It's like, do you want to let Craig Wright come into your living room and take a shit on your couch?
Craig can go fuck himself.
Yeah, exactly. So if not having Craig if moderating personal spaces and censorship is censorship, then yes, I believe in censorship.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, let's continue.
Yeah. So
you could have technically done it pre-SegWit.
Yep. It would have been kind of shittier. Would have been weird. I could have done it pre-Taproot. It would have been weird.
But let's say we're 2 months before SegWit. We're 2 months. Let's just go through this.
Sure. Yeah.
We're 2 months before SegWit. SegWit doesn't exist yet.
Yep.
And you do it at that point.
Yeah.
It would be less data that you could put in.
No, I think you could figure out ways to put in arbitrary amounts of data. Like you could do pay to script hash and do that and put it in the script, and then you could put it in weird multi-sigs and you could spread it across multiple inputs. And these are things that I kind of wouldn't want to do. Like if it had been really inelegant, I probably wouldn't have done it. Or if it had been sort of like more hacky, I would have been like, meh. But yeah. There could have been 1 meg blocks fat redolent with inscriptions pre SegWit. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Got it. Okay. So then Taproot comes into play.
Mm-hmm.
We add Taproot. How does that change things?
So pre Taproot, there were a lot of limits on script sizes. There were limits on the witness. SegWit witnesses had a bunch of weird limitations on script size and other things that I don't fully understand. I looked at them a while ago, but they've since like fallen out of my brain. And yeah, it had these weird, things. And these things were never there. These sort of like checks. I think they're all standardness rules, like not consensus standardness, not consensus policy. So they had all these weird checks, and they were not there to prevent users from putting arbitrary data in the chain. They were there for specific technical reasons. And then when Taproot came along, those specific technical reasons were no longer an issue, and they got lifted. So the devs who are doing this stuff, people are saying like, oh, we need to review things more carefully. Like, listen, if you're not paying attention, like you're not going to be part of the conversation. And these devs who are doing it put limitations in place to avoid things other than arbitrary data storage, and then they lifted them for reasons those unrelated. So if you're confused about how Bitcoin works, like, yeah, you need to pay more attention. And if you're very concerned about arbitrary data storage, maybe you should have been paying attention at that time, because that wasn't even like these limits were lifted in public. This is something I'm learning about as a open source dev. Is I work completely in public. I work on GitHub. Me and Raf, my second paid apprentice, work in Discord. We've literally been pair programming inscriptions like 4 to 6 hours a day in an empty Discord video chat room that anybody could join. And I've been telling everybody about this shit. And people like act like this is blindsiding them, right? Like I've been telling like, this. I've been telling
you wouldn't fucking shut up about it.
Yeah, I wouldn't fucking shut up about it for the last like 10 months. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, this like blindsided thing. Listen, guys, like devs are out here trying to engage you and trying to help you educate yourself. And it's I mean, I think I have a huge responsibility. I think every dev has a huge responsibility to educate users, but users kind of need to pick up the last mile of that education and engage with technical topics, right? You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink.
So I mean, you mentioned devs and Taproot. Andrew Polstra, who was one of the leading minds behind Taproot and our Taproot implementation, commented on this on the mailing list, and I just want to read his post real quick. Unfortunately, as near as I can tell, there is no sensible way to prevent people from storing arbitrary data and witnesses without incentivizing even worse behavior and/or breaking legitimate use cases. If we ban useless data, then it would be easy for would-be data stores to instead embed their data inside useful data, such as dummy signatures or public keys. Doing so would incur a 2x cost to them, but if 2x is enough to disincentivize storage, then there's no need to have this discussion because they will be forced to stop due to fee market competition anyway. And if not, it means there's little demand for Bitcoin block space. So what's the problem with paying miners to fill it with data that validators don't even need to perform real computation on? But if we were to ban useful data, for example, saying that a witness can't have more than 20 signatures in it, then we are into the same problem we had pre-Taproot, that it is effectively impossible to construct signing policies in a general and composable way, because any software that does so will need to account for multiple independent limits. We deliberately replace such limits with you need to pay 50 weight for each signature to make this sort of analysis tractable. There's a reasonable argument that this sort of data is toxic to the network, since even though the market is willing to bear the price of scarce block space, if people were storing NFTs and other crap on the chain, then the Bitcoin fee market would become entangled with the random pump and dump markets, undermining legitimate use cases and potentially preventing new technology like Lightning from gaining a strong foothold. But from a technical point of view, I don't see any principled way to stop this. Andrew Polster, Director of Research, Blockstream.
This is Andrew Polstra in one concise mailing list mail, like working through and summarizing something that took me like 12 months to like noodle through. So like, yeah, shout out to Andrew. Yeah, seems right.
Yeah, that's why I felt like it was important to to read that.
Yeah. I'm pretty optimistic about the concerns that he lists about sort of the fee market getting messy. It's a different I certainly hope that there aren't a lot of pump and dumps, and in fact we can talk about how inscriptions are designed to be a bit hostile to pump and dumps and a bit hostile to some of the kinds of speculation that happens in Ethereum NFTs. Actually, why don't I just say it? So on Ethereum, because of this like pointer convention where you point to off-chain data, you can mint a collection of one monkey picture and a collection of a billion monkey pictures for the same cost, right?
Right.
So with inscriptions, you actually have to pay for every byte of every pixel of every monkey, right?
Right, because the data is actually being stored on chain.
That's right. Yeah. So you kind of have to pay this upfront cost to make anything, right? And I think that pump and dumps are a sort of a form of speculation. They are an attempt to easily create a large number of assets, which are, of dubious value, and then try to push that on the market.
And like closely hold the majority of them, but give the appearance that there's liquidity or
Yeah. But if somebody wants to go to like a quarry and spend like a year like carving spheres of rock out of the stone at great personal expense and then try to sell it, like that's kind of like what inscriptions are like.
right.
Like you have to pay for every byte of everything. And so I'm actually
There's still going to be pump and dumps, but
but in general I'm pretty sanguine about the how this affects the Bitcoin fee market. But yeah, Andrew's right. Like, so
I do want to go into the fee market at some point, but
oh yeah.
we can continue. I think we're like at the basis of inscriptions, right? So
Yep. So for normal Bitcoin users, inscriptions are just these transactions with big witnesses with data that looks like it's not really that important. For people who want
the
to,
data is all text,
no, it's not text. It's binary.
right?
Yeah, because there's binary formats. There's you can do any web format you can put in an inscription. So no, it's all binary. But essentially, it's an op false, op if, eyes glazing over. Stay with me, Maddie.
I'm listening.
And then a bunch of data pushes. That's it.
Okay,
That's it.
got it.
And I call it an envelope. And so because of the op false, op if, and then data pushes and then op end if, the contents of the envelope, the script, the push opcodes don't even get executed by Bitcoin Core. They just get skipped. It's actually, I don't know how I could have designed it in a lower impact way. Like I literally think, I mean, unless somebody has an idea, like this was designed so that Bitcoin Core nodes just ignore them. And there's actually an argument that this will make it cheaper, not more expensive to make this run a full node for complicated reasons.
You want to go into that real quick, or
Sure. First off, like, yeah, maybe you're a SegWit disrespecter. That's cool, man. Complicated upgrade. Why don't you run a node that doesn't have SegWit on it? You don't like those 4meg blocks? Sweet. Now, because these witnesses that many users are putting in their transactions, those tick down that sort of that limit. You will see smaller blocks the more inscriptions there are.
right?
So
Because
Luke,
you don't even see the witness data.
no. So if you're Luke Dashir and you feel like users are lying and tricking the code,
That's a new pronunciation. Continue.
that's the correct pronunciation.
Okay.
Yeah. Everybody thinks it's Luke Dash Jr.
And then I've heard Luke Dasher.
No, it's Luke Dashir. Luke Dash. I don't know. Actually, no. Maybe I don't know if it's which one.
You added like a little bit of French to it.
Yeah. Bonjour. Bonjour. Je suis Luc Dashir.
But if you're running pre-SegWit node, you don't even see it.
Yeah. So Luke Dashir has talked about maybe 300K blocks, right? Some people are into that. Talk to some people at
Right.
Bitcoin Park about that. If you want 300 kilobyte blocks, maybe you can get that today and just run pre-SegWit, right? And if you want to make Bitcoin like Bunker Coin, where you like broadcast blocks over like a fucking ham radio.
Well, yeah. MBK said at 300 kilobyte blocks, we can do AM broadcasting on AM radio waves.
Bro, maybe
So you can just like connect a radio and then sync your node that way.
wouldn't that be cool if you could run a pre-SegWit node and run it over AM radio?
Yeah, that would be awesome.
So I think maybe you can do that.
Well, I guess we'll find out. But
Yep.
then I guess the other argument is that is what? If you're running do you have an argument for it improves IBD if you're running a post taproot node?
Yep. So if you
IBD, by the way, is when your initial block download. It's
Yeah.
like you're spinning up a node for the first time.
distinct from IBS. So when you're downloading a node block, okay, so a lot of nodes run, well, let me say one thing is it gives us a really interesting, if you're running a pruned node with assume valid, and assume a prune node is a node that verifies transactions but doesn't save them, and a node with assume valid is a node that doesn't check transactions that are buried too deep in the chain. If you're running that kind of node, then this would be a very simple patch to Bitcoin Core. PR is always welcome. You could not even download these old transactions in the first place, or not even download the old witnesses. Let me say very specifically.
And most of it's in the witness for the inscriptions.
Yeah. So this gives us a very nice option for running, very nice security trade-off for running a Bitcoin node, where you run a prune node with assume valid, and assume valid is turned on by default. Pruning is not turned on by default, but many users do that to save space. And when eventually Bitcoin Core makes a new release and assume valid the assume valid block height goes like above this block height with these inscriptions, then you've got this very lean stretch of the chain where you don't even have to download these witnesses.
Because they're crowding out other transactions, but they're using the witness, so
they're not crowding out transactions. I would say they're crowding out non-witness data.
Okay.
Yep. So, and then you're only downloading the transactions and not the witnesses.
So we have Filter Maxi in the comments. He's really mad at you, and I think he's mad at me too. He says, but this comment, I'm curious on your take. In that situation, you're not fully validating. Should that be a concern for Bitcoiners, or?
Well, I think they need to understand what assume valid does. It sounds like, and by the way, I love all the Bitcoiners, even the haters, even the Ordinals disrespecters. Like, it's all love. I want to keep things really, avoid making things personal, and I really appreciate the people who have done that. So be mad at the code, not at me, and definitely not at Matthew. So yeah, I think maybe it would be good for people to understand what assume valid does, and to decide for themselves whether running with assume valid is a full node or not.
Right.
Like there's many different trade-offs that you can make when you run Bitcoin. You can build from source, you cannot build from source. Pruning isn't really a security trade-off, but assume valid is. And there are many valid security trade-offs, right? Like if you like run a full node at home and or not, and you're comfortable with an SPV wallet, then that is a security trade-off.
So pre-inscriptions, why don't you go through the argument for why assume valid exists and why it was chosen to begin with?
Sure. So the way that assume valid works, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not a Bitcoin Core dev. Whenever the Bitcoin Core developers cut a new release of Bitcoin Core, there's this block hash, I think, that is hard coded into the code. And that block hash is a block that is very deep in the chain. And it's a block hash that the Bitcoin Core devs and community members, because everybody can verify this, right, that they think is a valid block, and everything's already been validated in it. And then every release, I think they include this block hash in Bitcoin Core, and then they
how I don't think they don't like update every release, right? It's just some releases they update it.
That might be it. I don't know.
It's
So
essentially like a checkpoint.
yeah, no, because there's another thing called a checkpoint, which works very differently.
Okay.
And this is actually way better. So,
And it's meant to speed up IBD, right? So you don't have to validate everything before that point.
well, you validate a lot of things, but so you don't have to do signature checking primarily.
Okay.
You still validate that the work is in the headers, that the transaction puts output match, all that stuff. All you do is you just skip the witnesses.
Okay.
So or the script sigs if they're pre-SegWit. So the reason that this is believed by the Bitcoin Core developers and many community members to be an acceptable security trade-off is that a lot of people just download and run Bitcoin Core without reading the code. And they're like, okay, well, and listen, I'm going to get things wrong. So the Bitcoin Core developers should please correct me for my misinterpretations of the things that they're doing. But they're basically like, okay, well, like if you're running our code, you're assuming that our code is right. And so our code, many people have already run our code on the blockchain on Bitcoin and said that, okay, this block at this height is valid. So we're just going to, in a new release, say, yeah, this is like buried. It's kind of been verified. Everybody agrees that the code in Bitcoin Core validates this block correctly. And so we're just going to hard code it. And it's not a checkpoint, because if there was another longer chain from Genesis somehow, or another fork that was below this point, Bitcoin Core would actually follow that fork, even if it's like, even if the assume valid block is not in that fork.
Right. It's not a hard-coded block. It's a hard-coded, or it's a pointer that says you don't have to validate.
Yeah. It doesn't influence fork choice.
Got it.
So
that's the differentiation there.
Yeah. And so I think like people get really hung up on what is and isn't.
You could technically have a reorg past that point.
Yeah. Yeah. So people get really hung up on what is and isn't a full node. And it becomes almost like a spiritual question, like like a philosophical question. So I want to stay out of that and say there are many different security trade-offs that people already make. And you should figure out which security trade-offs are acceptable to you, and you should understand them. And I have completely forgotten how this started.
Well, we were talking about inscriptions. We were talking about arbitrary data.
No, it was like full node trade-offs. Like, wouldn't this make it harder to run a full node? Oh yeah, if you're running a pruned node with assume valid, is that a full node?
Right.
And that's like just a spirit question that only you and God know. Like your definition of what a full node is.
Right. I mean, I would say that's not a full node.
Okay.
Yeah. Because you don't have everything.
Do you run assume valid?
Yeah, I mean, presumably it's the default, right?
Yeah, it's the default. So
yes.
Do you not run a full node? Do you have any full nodes?
I mean, I don't prune. I think the pruning is the...
Wait, what's the point in downloading shit you're never going to verify?
Is that I have it and I can basically seed it out to the rest of the network. Right?
That's an archival node.
Yeah.
So you don't run any full nodes according to the definition you just gave me.
Well, I don't know if assume valid. I would say I don't fucking know.
That's what I mean about definitions being kind of silly.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like you gaslit me a little bit there, but
no, I'm just
we'll accept it.
I'm just coming with...
We talked about censorship earlier. I don't. I might choose who comes on the show, but once the show gets going, it's intentionally a live, unedited show. It intentionally has interactive, like Filter Maxi gets to say everything he wants to say in the live chat, and everyone's going to see it forever.
Not trying to gaslit. I really think that these definitions are tricky, and when people come down really hard on one side or another of a definition, it means that there's other things that they might think that are that become inconsistent.
Well, it's a dicier topic, I think, because we've spent so many years essentially debating the Ethereum community on what a full node is.
Nobody runs Ethereum full nodes.
Yeah,
there's like one.
Well, then what's a full node, right?
No. That this thing I'm pretty confident in the definition. I don't know where the line in Bitcoin is for full nodes, but I know that
it's way before Ethereum.
Ethereum is so far off in the fucking stratosphere. Like in terms of that line, they're another fucking planet. Okay. I don't know if there's an Ethereum full node on Earth.
So inscriptions you can put arbitrary data in the chain. The main use case so far has been, image files.
Yeah, but you can do 3D models. I added support for STL files.
But this is just like, what does ordinals.com display, right?
Well, no, I mean anybody can put anything in an envelope, in an
Right.
ordinal protocol envelope,
Right.
and then use that, reference that for at any time, at any purpose. You could just put let's say you want to build a FGC9 and
Right. 3D printed gun.
3D printed gun, great design, very innovative design, and you want to go to some place and you can't take anything with you, and they're going to search you, but maybe you can write down a transaction ID somewhere. So you make a transaction. It's got this witness. In the witness, there's this envelope. And in the envelope, there is the plans for the FGC9. Go to another country, downloading a full node. A lot of people run full nodes. Nothing suspicious about that. You get your full node going. You have this transaction ID. You got the plans for the FGC9. And let's say you're not a terrorist. Let's say you're visiting Myanmar.
And then you download, and then you have to decode it, right? You essentially.
I think decode is the wrong word, because it's not a code. I mean, you don't have to decode it. It's not encrypted,
right?
But you have to you have to find it in the transaction, and then you have to concatenate these data pushes. Let's say you're visiting Myanmar on vacation, but they got a lot of rebels, and you want to help them out. So then you go there, right? And now you have a way that, using software, which is very freely available, Bitcoin, to get those plans. So you can use it for anything. You can use inscriptions for anything.
Right. I mean, can you, and presumably it can be encrypted data too.
Sure. Yeah, you can have an encrypted blob, encrypted with a password.
Take like a multi-sig key and then encrypt it, write it to the chain.
There's tricky things with that because you could. Yeah, you could do any kind of encryption. Yeah, put it in there.
So it could be useful for like dead man switches.
Sure. Yeah, for sure. Dead man switch. You could have, somebody knows, two multi-sigs that then they can come together. They can scan the chain for this data. Also, I would encourage people who are thinking about doing envelope level protocol development to try to improve inscriptions with these use cases. I'm very open to these use cases, and I'm trying to figure out how to make them work. But if you don't want to, the first data push in an inscription envelope is the characters ORD. And this means that it says that this is an inscription. So if you'd like to design different protocols that require arbitrary data in Bitcoin transactions, you can do that by just picking your own string, and then you're off to the races.
Got it. And I think people are uploading audio files. I saw
MP3, PNG, WebP, SVG, all HTML and SVGs which normally can access arbitrary web resources are fastidiously sandboxed, so they can't access anything that's not on chain. So everything you see on ordinals.com, that's kind of not the front end, but is actual content, is on chain. Even when you see these games, somebody put a Doom clone in there, somebody put Snake Game, all those things are sandboxed, so they're fully on chain.
Got it. Okay, where do we go next? So these transactions are there's seems like there's a lot of momentum. Oh, before we get there, let's quickly talk about this teleburn thing you came up with yesterday, 2 days ago.
Bro, Bitcoin Park is such a bad influence on me.
Just don't put that on us.
No. What I mean is I try to be pretty diplomatic. You'll see I'll go on NFT podcasts because I want to reach artists and I want to tell them how these things are great. And while I'm there, if somebody asks me about Ethereum, I'll probably say, I'm not really interested in it. But Bitcoin Park has a lot of hardcore Bitcoiners.
That's true.
And a lot of them won't name names, but they love inscriptions. And so when they're like, hey, maybe people would like to burn their monkey JPEGs on Ethereum and send them on a one-way space trip to Bitcoin. And they have an idea for that. We get that working, basically like I always want to keep things positive on a personal level, but on a technical level, I'm always willing to choose violence. And Bitcoin Park and the hardcore Bitcoiners here make me choose violence.
So what is this? So right now people are essentially, and I guess you did
Somebody
the first
torched
one.
a 500,000 Bored Ape on Ethereum.
So they provably burn it. And then it gets, and then they add that data to the Bitcoin chain.
Well, it kind of works in a different order.
Like work us through this.
Yeah. So like, let's say you have a CryptoPunk.
Okay. So this is an Ethereum NFT.
Yeah. Highest value, millions of dollars. So let's say you would rather have that CryptoPunk on Bitcoin. So what you do is you first create an inscription that represents that CryptoPunk.
You create that first.
Yeah, you create that first. And then you maybe use
So
the
now
same.
the CryptoPunk art is on the chain.
Yeah, you've essentially made a duplicate of
Right.
the art. Yeah, you just copy pasta the art into an inscription. And that's in your Bitcoin wallet. Maybe you have it on a Sats card, or you have it on an open dime. And then you use the Ordinal theory utility, and you type teleburn and then that inscription ID. And it spits out a JSON blob. And that JSON blob has a field called Ethereum, and it gives you an Ethereum address. And that address is cryptographically, you can prove that it commits in the cryptographic sense to a particular inscription.
Right. This copy that you have.
Yeah. And then you go to Ledger. I did this yesterday for the first time. And you select the NFT in the Ledger interface that you would prefer to have on Bitcoin. And you send it to this
If
address.
you're storing the NFT on a Ledger device.
Yeah. Yeah. Or whatever you're doing, MetaMask or whatever.
You send it to the address that Ord spit out for you.
Yep. The teleburn address. And this address, you can prove both that there is, with overwhelmingly likelihood, not a corresponding private key, which means that it can never be moved because you can never make a signature that is valid for this address. And you can prove that it commits to the inscription. And now this gets into social layer conventions. But the way that people are encouraged to interpret this as is that the original owner of the NFT would like to liberate it for oranger pastures.
Right. So they want to move to an actual immutable chain.
Mm-hmm. And they want their data not to be a pointer somewhere.
Instead of it being on IPFS
or Arweave or this other shit.
It's on the Bitcoin chain.
Yep.
And there's this crazy, almost like game theory element to it, where like these are all collector people, and the sooner you do that,
who wants to be first,
the more valuable your NFT is. So now we have all these shitcoiners that are essentially rushing to burn their shitcoin NFTs and then move them over to Bitcoin. And it seems like over the last 2 days, like people are making clients for like all the chains, like Solana and Tezos. And
oh yeah, I mean, for this, I got to say, like this, I'm being reckless here. Like I have not merged this into Ord. This is a draft PR, which is my way of saying like, yo, this code is like scrawled on like construction paper. So you should not do this unless you fully understand the consequences of what you're doing, and literally that you've reviewed the code at this point, right? So it's that kind of thing.
Disclosure. Disclaimer.
Well, part of it is because I'm running a Bitcoin project, and you
don't want to pay attention to the specifics of how Solana people are transferring it over or whatever.
Oh no, I'll figure out how to fucking burn that shit. But no, what I'm saying is that I want to hold myself to the Bitcoin standard and not to the shitcoin standard for development, right? Like, when I open a PR, I don't just hit merge, even though I like understand this code base better than anyone else on earth. I wait for another review from a team member, a community member. So
Right, I saw you fucked up the date on your most recent release, and then you blamed Rob Hamilton because
he acted. He fucking act that shit, bro. Don't act if you
personal responsibility. It's on both of you.
Yeah. Well, and on anybody who's not fucking who thinks that the latest version was released in 2022. It was, but like, you know, somebody was able to, I mean, not call me out, but like jokingly be like, "Yo, Casey, what fucking year is
I
this?"
saw that. Okay, so
yeah. So, anyways, but to be clear, like I take my responsibilities to people who use my software seriously, and I want to hold myself to that higher standard. And so I kind of consider what I've done here with Teleburn a little reckless, but somebody had an ape on the chopping block, and they were ready to pull the trigger, and I wanted to make sure that ape was not destroyed, but was able to rocket into the Ordiverse successfully.
But Not So Fast beat that person anyway.
No,
they got like the Miladian first
no,
or whatever, right?
No,
fucking I can't believe I'm talking about NFC.
No, I think Not So Fast was second. I think the ape was first.
Okay.
Yeah.
But anyway, so the shitcoiners are rushing to move their NFTs to Bitcoin.
Not move. I mean, like fucking, they're ready to torch that shit. Degens are ready to torch billions of dollars of value.
That's why on other bunch
chains.
of shitcoiners hate you right now.
Yeah, they can get fucked
because it's almost like to go back to that game theory, like the people who move first might be incentivized because it makes it more rare of a collectible.
Well,
with air quotes.
One thing I'll say for these people who are all rushing is like, you know, wait, you know, understand what you're doing. And one thing you could do is you could create the inscription first, and then the inscription would have a very low number.
And you can always point to it in the future.
Yeah. So maybe what you want to do is you want to...
But that doesn't count. You have to rush and burn now.
No, well, I know why you're saying that. But you don't. I think having the low inscription is good enough. But that's social layer shit. But no, if you want to, like, listen, torch that shit. You want to fucking... You got some dumbass... Wait, let me say. You got some dumbass shit on another chain. Fucking teleburn it and send it to Inscription 0, which is mine. The only one I've made, and then I can have all this dog shit on other chains.
The first inscription,
yeah, Inscription 0, yeah.
Well, no, I mean, but the reason I say, I mean, look, I know what goes through collectors' minds. I think most Bitcoiners have some kind of collectible past issue.
I don't, so I need this shit explained to me.
So, like, I'm a domain hoarder, obviously.
Yeah, same. My favorite one of mine is blackmarket.money. It just says Bitcoin.
That's great. I'm a domain hoarder. My previous life, you know, I really like sports collectibles, like signature, you know, autographs and
whatnot. Bro, this is all for you. This is also you could degen out
me. But so anyway, I mean, the reason I say that though is because just because you have a low inscription number, like everyone knows at what like Ethereum block you burnt it at as well. So
not necessarily. Ethereum is doing crazy shit where they insist on protocol level amnesia, where you're not even going to know what fucking block height some fucking transaction.
Well, maybe on Solana, I don't know.
No, Solana's even worse. Solana has had like 2 brain cells to rub together from day one.
The people who move quicker will have the rarer shit. So just burn all your shit. But anyway, that's not the point. The point is,
be careful. We're Bitcoiners over here.
The point is, shitcoiners are rushing to, or a bunch of shitcoiners are moving their NFTs over through this burn process. And then a bunch are creating new NFTs through inscriptions, right? So there's this massive demand that we're seeing kind of happen.
Yeah.
And, you know, the tooling is still relatively basic and stuff, and you're still seeing
basic is generous.
Yeah, you're still seeing this massive demand, right? Like
I think somebody
people have to run their own Bitcoin.
Somebody told me that we're having the largest influx of new people running full nodes,
right,
like in a long time.
They're running full nodes,
and this is intentional on my part. I haven't made a light client. You want to do this shit for the foreseeable future, you're gonna need a fully synced Bitcoin core node with TX index, no pruning. Like that's what you need. Those are table stakes.
Right. So you have to run a full node, and then you have to run Ord attached to it, and then Ord needs to index. So like there's a lot of friction to doing it, but there's still a lot of demand. So
yeah.
So that goes
discord.gg/ordinals is the place to get tech support. I'm inundated by tech support requests on all sides. I'm also inundated by essentially tech support requests from other Bitcoin developers where these new users are using things like Sparrow Wallet.
Right.
So like let Craig Raw like do his thing. And just
I love that they're using Sparrow because Sparrow actually has coin selection.
We recommended it labeling because of that.
Yeah.
If you want to make if you want to transfer an inscription safely with a wallet other than Ord, it needs coin selection. And Sparrow also has very good labeling.
Yep.
So you could actually label each one of your UTXOs manually with the inscription.
I've been trying to encourage Bitcoiners to use coin control and labeling for years, and now,
bro,
the
it's all a psyop to get the rare Pepe degens to run Bitcoin core nodes and learn about coin selection.
So the point I was going to is so now mempools are incredibly full.
They call me Casey Fullblocks, baby. Satoshi Nakadashi.
Mempools are
because I fill them up.
Let's talk about let's talk about how that impacts people who are trying to make quote unquote regular Bitcoin transactions. I'm just trying to buy, a t-shirt.
Yep.
With a Bitcoin on-chain transaction, and now mempools are completely full. I have to pay a higher fee.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what fee do you have to pay?
Right now I have to pay double what I had to pay 2 weeks ago. I have to pay 2 sats per byte to get into the next block.
Wow, man, you must be hurting.
No, but I think this is a forward-looking conversation. I
want to focus on the fact that, listen, the mempool is rocking at 6 sats per vbyte to get into the next block.
I have a provocative.
Keep in mind that this is a forward-looking conversation, not a problem now.
I have a provocative question because I got a lot of pie on my face previously, and I said I was never going to do this again. But this time is different, TM. Because fucking Casey just Leroy Jenkins the shit on us.
Leroy Jenkins.
There's a possibility that mempools never clear again.
It's not a possibility. We've entered a new fee regime, and it's never going to change.
Okay, so that's.
I mean, we're fully in forward-looking speculation. No, it's fucking over for the mempool.
Just that. I mean, I wouldn't go that far. Obviously, mempools are designed to handle this type of situation.
Yeah, and this is all in Bitcoin's game theory. This is all in Bitcoin's incentives. What I mean is that,
but the reason
the default mempool size is 300 megabytes, and there's a very real possibility that it will never be empty ever again.
Yeah, I mean, right now,
we're actually not that high over it. We're 325 or something.
That's what's crazy is the fee to get into the next block is 2 sats per byte, but the purge is 1.8 sats per byte. Any transaction under 1.8 sats per byte gets knocked out of most mempools. Yeah, I guess we're slightly over. We have 14,000 unconfirmed transactions. It looks like mempool.space is saying we're under 300 megs for the average mempool. But it also says purging, so you might have broken mempool.space. But anyway, the point I was trying to make is I feel like 2 sats per byte to get into the next block right now is irrelevant, because I think right now you don't have RBF, you don't have child pace repair.
Once I add RBF and people start trying to rescue those 1 sat per byte,
so there's a bunch of 1 sat per byte.
Yeah, that are just
NFTs that just haven't confirmed.
Yeah, and they all opt into RBF. Then to be clear, this is all the 1 sat per byte transactions generated by the Ord software. They all opt into RBF, and I haven't added fee bumping support. Pretty easy. I think maybe you can even fee bump with, I don't know, but. Yeah, when I do that, there's going to be a rush of people trying to.
So it's not a fully efficient fee market on the inscription side right now because you don't have those tools.
It's not fully efficient is an understatement.
Right.
Okay.
Well, my point is presumably this is going to start the fees are going to go up as a result of this, right?
Yeah, and also I mean as Bitcoiners who maybe have taken a principal stand against NFTs in the past want to create their own Bitcoin native digital artifacts. That maybe they want to put their pet on the time chain. I consider this to be one of the most based use of inscriptions. Maybe Bitcoiners will want to do this, and more people want to do this, and it won't just be NFT degens. And I think that I want to put out a friendly challenge to inscription disrespectors, that one thing that they can do is that they can make Bitcoin better for financial use cases, right? For these financially dense use cases, they can build out the Lightning Network, improve Lightning Network. You can start using Bitcoin And as Bitcoin becomes better and more used for these economically, these pure financial transactions, it will naturally crowd out inscriptions. So if you don't like inscriptions, you actually have a free market, Mad Max capitalism way of fighting them. You can just make Bitcoin better for the uses that you think it's better for. And you can just ignore inscriptions.
Why will it crowd out inscriptions?
Because an inscription is very large. It's like this big waterlogged thing, you know? And these pure financial
MBK
transactions.
says like shit in a pool, it like just floats to the top.
Yeah, do you know what the Bristol scale is?
No.
Okay, it's like a medical scale of shit. So the inscriptions are listen, let's not go there. So the financial transactions are very, very dense, right? They're very small compared to inscriptions, and financially speaking, they're very dense. Now, a big inscription, how sort of financially dense it is depends on like how much the person who wants to make it is willing to pay, but it's very large. And so let's say you want to get into the next block and you want to pay 2 sats per V byte or whatever it is. If you're doing a financial transaction, yeah, you have to pay 2 sats per V byte, but your transaction is very small. And so the absolute size of the fee is relatively small. So you have a 200 byte transaction or like let's say 1,000 byte transaction.
Right.
That's going to cost you, let's say it's no witness.
Because you're literally paying on how much data you're storing.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's say you have a pure financial Bitcoin transaction. That's 1,000 bytes. To outbid in fee rate terms a 400 kilobyte inscription, you have to pay a higher fee rate, but your bid, the absolute size of your bid is still very small relative to the massive amount that the inscriber has to make to outbid you.
But at the end of the day, you're paying the same fee rate per the number of bytes that
you are, but you have a smaller number of bytes.
Right.
And so you're paying much less in absolute terms. Yeah, you have to pay 2 sats per B byte, but you're paying 1,000 sats or 2,000 sats instead of, 400,000
numbers start
sats.
to get kind of ridiculous as if the free market free market continues.
I fucking love Shinobi. Shinobi's been like, you guys are so fucking stupid. This shit is gonna get priced out so fucking quick. And I don't know if it's gonna get priced out.
When we hit like 20 sats per byte.
Yeah, 20 sats per V byte. I mean, it's gonna have to get pretty high to stop
80.
the inscribers. We're going there. But listen, like people want to do pure financial transactions are gonna have to start bidding closer to what it's actually worth it to them.
Right. Right. Yeah, I mean, I just wonder if people will be. It's just crazy that Freedom Money is competing against fucking NFT degens.
Freedom Money is competing against Freedom Information.
But that's the thing. So like you mentioned like the Ghost Gun files, or like I mentioned like an encrypted payload for like a dead man switch or stuff. Like these are the type of things that I could imagine people paying very high fees, like willing to pay very high fees for.
Right.
And I guess people are just going to ultimately make a decision on what they think is worth it and what they don't think is worth it.
The market decides.
So we have Ride or Die Freak Filter Maxi here.
How come you never call me a Ride or Die Freak?
Well, you got to join the live chat.
Fuck. Okay. I'll do it.
I reward the people who come in and contribute to the live shows.
Called out.
Well, the best was once we have Ride or Die Freak Carlos, and then he said he liked the morning rips, and I don't like the morning rips, so then I formally Ride or Die Freak, and now he's back to Ride or Die. But anyway, Filter Maxi is asking, you can tell by his name, he said, or you can filter them out with your node. How do you feel about this concept of people running? I guess Luke Dashir came up with this filter idea, right?
Sort of. So Luke Dashir doesn't like inscriptions. Luke Dashir, bonjour. He doesn't like inscriptions, and so he was like, well, somebody should write a filter. And somebody helpfully responded to his tweet with some information about how to filter those transactions. Basically, the response was, hey, op false, op if, like ORD, and then you can just block them all. This helpful person, his name was Casey Rodarmor. I told Luke Deshir how to write this patch to filter them from his mempool. So I really encourage any node operator who doesn't like these things. Actually, there's very subtle technical reasons related to not seeing a double spend against you because it matches the Ordinal's inscription signature. So you might actually be blindsiding yourself if you
someone
run this
who's
patch.
trying to commit a double spend will intentionally hide it.
Yeah, by including an inscription and you're running this patch. So I think it's, again, personal responsibility. Got to understand what you're running. But yeah, I encourage everybody who doesn't like these things to filter them out of your mempool if you understand the consequences. And I encourage everybody who would like to see the JPEGs flow freely over the network, they can just run unmodified Bitcoin Core. And I kind of suspect that there are so many inscribing degens out there that we already form a fully connected subgraph that's peering with miners, and that any attempt at relay level censorship is ultimately futile.
The miners have a direct incentive to see all these transactions because they want to get paid the most money possible. Right?
But I don't even think that the miners need to do anything. I think there's so many degens just running a default full node that will never run this patch. So many inscribers. Got to stop calling them degens. They're my people. So many inscribers who want these things to flow across the network. They're just running this patch, and probably randomly, because there's so many of them, they already form a fully connected network within a network. And some of them are probably randomly connected to miners. Miners probably run nodes with very high peering just by default. And so, I think the relay level battle is already lost. So you can run this patch, but it's not going to do anything.
Well, I love this because Filter Maxi is essentially a co-host for this show. He said it's not about blocking; it's about reducing the liability for his node. He just doesn't want to see it. So that's the strongest argument for it.
Oh yeah, I don't think there's any liability. Yeah. I think that's a legal non-issue.
Oh, so we have a separate comment from Mark Gusat. That is basically, to sum it up, how likely is a state attack is, and how could it look if CSAM gets onto the time chain? After all, it's totalitarians' favorite justification to attack freedom tech. For example, they may use it as an excuse to only allow license cleared, blessed by the state big corporate entities to legally run a full node, forcing ISPs, VPNs to do enforcement, effectively trying to achieve the same outcome as big blocks were meant to achieve. So basically, what are your thoughts on when illegal data starts? Ultimately, obviously,
inevitably.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about ghost gun files. Ghost gun files are illegal in a lot of places.
If some state, if some government agent sends you a letter, are you going to stop running your node?
I mean, I'm not.
Okay.
But so, do you think that's?
We showed up here to fight the government, right? As Bitcoiners, to resist the state.
See, now you sound like a spook.
No, these are my deeply held beliefs. I said I did this because I hate the government.
Yeah, but I think there's different lines, right?
We're taking away their ability to print money, collect taxes, and issue debt.
I mean, you can still collect taxes in a post-Bitcoin world.
Listen, Lightning is a big mix net.
Yeah, but I mean, they collected taxes in a massive cash-based economy before, everyone was just doing digital surveillance money. They just gotta.
I think in America, the tax rates in those cash-based economies were much low.
But anyway, I think there's a decent argument that it makes it definitely paints a bigger target on Bitcoin's back because it's more than just financial freedom. It's also freedom of speech stuff. And when you start getting into the freedom of speech stuff, it can get very dicey very quickly.
I actually disagree. So in America, we have the First Amendment, which vigorously protects free speech. And there have been many times historically where the state or a private individual has wanted to limit speech. And the courts have protected free speech. So I actually see the intermingling of free speech issues and Bitcoin as being a positive. Many people have said Bitcoin is speech. I personally believe that, but I've always thought that it will not hold up in court because I think that judges will look at Bitcoin and say Bitcoin is money.
Right. The argument is coded speech.
Sure, but
Right.
like, you know, this is, you know, judges sit in courts and then they make judgments.
Right. I mean, you can go on. Yeah.
But let me finish my thought. But people have already made personal, artistic, and political speech using inscriptions.
Right. Tank Man is a good example.
Tank
Like
Man,
someone put
which I
the
fucking
Tiananmen
retweeted, the
Square.
Taiwanese flag that I retweeted,
Right.
fucking Taiwan #1.
Right. In China,
So
that could land you in trouble.
In mainland Taiwan,
Right.
okay, they don't like it. Okay, so
But most Americans, I would think, would say that it's a noble cause to.
Yes, Taiwan is a beautiful country, and it is a sovereign nation, and everybody who thinks otherwise is deeply
to
confused.
encourage like anti-CCP speech, like anti-communist Chinese parties.
And that party is that's a deeply the CCP is a deeply censorious regime. So, anyways, inscriptions that have already been made are exactly the kind of speech that's protected under the First Amendment. And this turns Bitcoin into not only a platform for financial transactions, but also a publishing platform where you can pay money to publish your ideas in the public square. And this gives a sophisticated argument that judges will understand that says that Bitcoin is speech and that somebody who wants to access this public square and pay money to speak must be allowed to do so.
Okay, I mean, that's an interesting perspective. We've been 2 hours. Where do you want to go from here?
I think it's up to you. I mean, I want to talk about what do you want to talk about?
What was that? What was the thing we were talking about in the beginning that you said we were going to go back to? I completely forgot.
There's no way I'm going to remember that.
Yeah.
It's all a haze.
If anyone in the comments remembers. Is there... I'm curious from your opinion. There's a bunch of different Bitcoiners that would prefer if they can like press a big red button that just this never happened. Obviously that button doesn't exist. And the key value prop of Bitcoin is extremely hard to change.
I think
by
inscriptions
default.
and ordinals are already have a reasonable claim to being decentralized due to the nature of the protocol and due to the fact that there's full node runners and due to the fact that anybody can run the software. So I'm kind of not.
If you were in that camp and you were trying to stop inscriptions,
yep.
How would you stop inscriptions?
So I kind of gave you like, I just work on Lightning.
And then just try and crowd out.
Yeah. If Lightning becomes the dominant like Visa scale payment network of the world, maybe even above Visa scale.
And then fees just rise to the point where the majority of people are just not inscribing things.
Yeah. You want to rip a 4 megger, or you want to open and close, 1,000 Lightning channels that collectively can do each channel can do a Visa scale of payments, each one. You think the person with the fucking 4 megger, even if it's like an awesome fucking HTML generative art, you think they're going to be able to pay higher fees than you?
Right. No, that makes sense to me. The fee market crowds it out.
And
crowd out most of it.
Yeah.
And then the other thing also, by the way, just like on the topic of illegal content, not to bring it back.
No, for sure.
Like the way Bitcoin works, I mean, it's like relatively easy to track. So like if you're probably not like the best place to post illegal content.
Don't think very carefully about like your personal safety level and security before making a possibly trackable on-chain transaction that's going to be there forever.
Right. There's all these different privacy implications when you're doing inscriptions.
Yeah. So it's not a great place to post illegal content.
Yeah. Cool. I mean, I think this has been a pretty great conversation. Thank you for spending some time with us here. I hope the freaks found it helpful.
Yeah.
It's been 2 hours. We do have go on.
I need to learn to loosen up on podcasts. You know, I start off and I'm like very nervous, and then I'm like, and I'm like,
well, that's why I also like that Dispatch is, well, we're trying to do mostly in person, but also that it's no video.
Yeah, I think that's important.
It's harder to loosen up.
Yeah, I can just sit over here and like vape and drink my Monster and like just like chill.
There you go. Exactly.
It's vape day.
Do you think there's anything we should cover? We have Ben Price here in the live audience.
Ben Price, legendary beard.
What chat did you put it in?
Okay, my question was like, aren't miners like? So I understand the whole pool metaphor.
Yeah.
Like, as long as
we have to say his question out loud.
As long as like 80% of the block would have theoretically been underwater. Like,
wait, Ben, come over here. Come over here and just say it into the mic.
This is what I wrote in the chat. Aren't miners potentially still incentivized to leave out economic transactions if the block would otherwise be full with monetary transactions? So like example, the block is like 30% full with like standard high dense normal transactions. And then there's one 3 megabyte inscription that would take up, a little more than the remaining space. As long as like there's still a level there where you would include the inscription and push out some normal transactions. Again, I think this is moot if we would have full blocks with dense transactions, but we don't. But wondering if you can explain that.
That's actually an awesome question. So the idea is that every time a miner makes a block, they're kind of packing it like a Tetris game. You know, they have all these different transactions and they're all like, they all have the same shape, but you look at mempool.space, and sometimes it's like packed very elegantly with all these small transactions. And then in recent times, it's been like kind of jumbled up, And so if you have this one big transaction, you might kind of be in this like all or nothing situation. Like, for example, like if you have a 4 meg inscription, and then you've got like a bunch of transactions that just barely pay less than the total fees of that 4 megger. And then like the mempool is kind of empty. So yeah, it is true that you could be forced to make an all or nothing decision. Some people got really freaked out about this and they called it a stall attack. I think that people are kind of confused, like, because you could just do this by putting anything in a witness and it doesn't need to be an inscription. But yeah, like there's certain cases, especially when the mempool is empty and you're kind of choosing between one big not financially dense inscription or a bunch of small financially dense transactions. And yeah, there are some cases where, in that case, okay, well, these small transactions pay a higher fee rate, but the absolute fees paid by the larger inscription is higher, and so we choose the 4 megger.
State we live in right now, like in the future when block space is full.
Blocks are full.
It's hard for the listeners when you respond over there.
Yeah, come over here. Come over here.
No, I mean, you see my point.
But yeah, it's like,
I mean, blocks are full right now, and so inscriptions kind of fixes this.
Well,
thank God for inscriptions.
You're an exhausting individual.
Bro, you're coming at me.
I mean, this is the new world we live in.
Yeah, welcome, guys. Have fun.
I just can't believe.
You think that when I was like 10 months ago, when I was like, hey, Matt, do you want to, like, I made rare sats, we'd be sitting here?
No, I did not, even like a month ago. But yeah, we have innocuous ride or die innocuous Finch in the audience saying, someone take away his Monster drink. Yes.
It's done, man.
He's emptied. He keeps trying to like get the last couple of drops out of it.
The last bits of Monster juice, man.
I think this is a great 2-hour rip on something that I needed to know more about. So I like doing it on air so that the freaks can learn more as well.
That's one thing I'm really learning is that so many people want to learn about this or are curious. And so any private conversation is just between me and another person.
Doesn't scale well.
Doesn't scale. And I'm always down to help my friends. My friends need help doing stuff. Like, that's most important. But anytime I can have these conversations in public where a bunch of people can benefit from them, that's really great.
But where I was going with this is, I'm sure we'll have a follow-up in the future, because I do not think inscriptions are going to disappear anytime soon.
Anytime, Matthew.
And it's interesting that you agree with me that mempools will never clear again, because I was been wrestling with whether or not I was going to say that publicly. I guess I said it on Nostr yesterday.
Listen, 1 sat per V-byte. Listen, you gotta pony up.
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna get crazy out there. Yeah, so we'll do a follow-up conversation at some point when more questions come up and more implications kind of get exposed. Like, there's probably a bunch of different things that we can't even really comprehend about what happens next now that this like base protocol is out there.
Yep.
And we have the
social
Super Bowl
layer,
today.
bringing the social layer to Bitcoin.
So I assume a bunch of people will be rushing to their Super Bowl parties and whatnot. So before we wrap up, just hit the freaks with some final thoughts.
Oh, sure.
Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, man. Thank you for having me. It's a real pleasure. It's literally an honor. I hope that people go out there and learn more. There's some great Ordinals critics out there. Sometimes I have an alt with 0 followers, and I just go hang out on mute in Ordinal disrespecter Twitter spaces. God, I forget. Is it Codeologist on Twitter? His name's like Brian, I think.
I have no idea who that is.
Okay. Sorry if I'm butchering your name, man. Go listen to him. Take personal responsibility. Learn. Me personally, I would love it if you did that by joining our Discord, which, like, I'm now the mod, the admin of a 15,000 person Discord. So I'm trying to scale that up with basically volunteer mods at this point. Discord.gg/ordinals is where you can do that. I would love it if you contributed code to Ordinals or anywhere else in the Bitcoin ecosystem. Like, it's not really important. Just write some code and learn how to write some code. If you don't code, you can write docs. If you can write code but can't write your own code, you can review. Review burden is often a bottlenecking sort of feature of open source projects. So if you can get enough to, the most helpful thing is if I have something, or any open source developer has an issue or code and you find a bug in it and you just say, hey bro, bug on this line. That's so valuable. That's like worth its weight in gold. So there's all these ways to contribute. Education, docs, doesn't matter if you do it to Ord. Like, if you want to go to github.com/kc/ord and contribute, that's awesome. But if you want to go anywhere else in the Bitcoin ecosystem, Lightning, Bitcoin Core, wallets, libraries, got to shout out Rust Bitcoin. Rust Bitcoin is a Bitcoin Rust library maintained by Andrew Polstra et al. And it's without, Ord uses it heavily. When we make changes that we need to it, we try to contribute them to upstream. We upstream it. That's the open source term. If you don't code, learn how to get handy with a terminal, right? You can be part of these conversations in a much more material way if you are out there, like, running the code, and you have the ability to run the code, and you understand what your config files are doing. Don't overcomplicate things. See, a lot of people overcomplicate things with weird setups. You can go to an Apple store and open the terminal, and I don't know if they have the permissions locked down, but install Bitcoin Core in like one line and run a Bitcoin Core node on an Apple Store computer and just leave it there. So a lot of the time when people are having trouble getting set up, it's because they're doing some weird non like custom thing. They have the node on a different thing. Their perms are weird. So like all this stuff, Bitcoin Core is enormously easy to run because the Bitcoin Core developers have done a lot of work. Once you if you have a computer and you have that one file, you can just say Bitcoin D and then it just goes. And that's the first step to like all of this. So do that. That's my closing thought.
Awesome, Casey. You want to show your podcast really quick?
Fuck yes, Hell Money podcast. If you want, this Citadel Dispatch is like the serious adult podcast for like the fucking hardcore Bitcoiners. If you want to see me and my friend Aaron just be ridiculous for like an hour and talk about Bitcoin inscriptions and Bitcoin's natal chart and Bitcoin astrology, you can find us at wherever, Matthew told me this, wherever you listen to podcasts, and you can sign up. Also on YouTube, we do a video. Erin is going hard in the paint, trying to bring the hose to Bitcoin. So she's doing God's work, guys. Maybe we can get the gender ratio a little bit better sometime in the future. So yeah, hellpodcast.money. Yeah, absolutely. And latest episode is a fucking banger. Video episode, Ordinal's guy goes to therapy. It's fucking hilarious.
Like laying on the couch and shit.
You should watch it. It's good. Yeah, clutching a Pusheen.
I saw it.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, you watched it?
Yeah.
Yeah, got him.
I knew you were going to regret not mentioning that.
Thanks, man. Thank you.
Just a quick, huge fuck you to NVK for saying on Nostr that I don't run any full nodes.
Bro, your own definition. Sorry, bro.
I think
hoisted on his own petard.
If assume valid is on, it's still a full node. We're going to go with that, and NVK is a liar.
I agree.
Everyone's a scammer.
No.
I run many full nodes. Thank you, Casey, for joining us. Huge shout out to the freaks for making it through this long week of content. Not only all the dispatches, but obviously we also had Rabbit Hole Recap. And the new episode of Freedom Money just dropped this week as well with Roya. She's really inspiring, amazing person. So search Freedom Money in YouTube to find that episode. That was in partnership with the Bitcoin Magazine team. Yeah, it's been a great week. I look forward to talking to all you freaks again soon. Like I said, feedback always appreciated.
Can I say just one other thing? Yeah. Like Twitter, the discourse on Twitter is so dumb. Like even the Bitcoiners who think that inscriptions are fucking dumb, in person they're like, it's all love, you know? Like, and especially at Bitcoin Park in Nashville, rapidly becoming the home, the Bitcoin's beating heart. That's all I'll say.
Oh, I appreciate that. Bitcoin Park it's a special place, huh?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, I was here like 4 months ago or
like super early on.
Yeah. It's awesome. It's
for grassroots. You're here for grassroots Bitcoin?
Or? Yeah.
It's a good event. That's an event only for meetup organizers. We have them all come in from around the country. And with all that said, I love you freaks. Feedback is appreciated. Your support is appreciated. Sharing with friends and family is appreciated. We will talk soon.